Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Thursday. It's Daryl here. It's bright and freaking early. It's 3:30 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, let me see if I can explain this video to you. This video might end up being kind of long. Yesterday, after I made my initial morning video, I did my workout, my painting and all that. And as I was going on a bike ride, I was really thinking, it was bothering me. I came across an article. TikTok star Jesse Sullivan is a trans person. And he had comments on Paul Stanley. And what Paul Stanley had commented about trans people. And the whole thing was bothering me. So I came home from my bike ride yesterday. And I made a video. The point is here that I know people, one thing people really hate, they despise, is being fooled, being played. And that's really what I see happening with a good part of the Republican Party. With conservatives, they're being played. And so I made a video, right? I was going to download that this morning. So this morning I started going through some stories just to see what else was going on this morning. And I came across two more stories that back up, that confirm the video that I made yesterday. Okay, so I'm going to add more links down below. On the backside, after this video finishes, this short video right here, you're going to see yesterday's video where I talk about how I believe a good part of the Republican Party is being played to be fearful and hateful of the whole LGBTQ community. This whole woke thing, this whole culture war stuff. How they're being played. It's easy. I think it's easier after Donald Trump came to power. I think it's sometimes easy to gather people. It's easy to make people hate and fear something. And that's what I see happening here. Then I came across these two stories this morning, and these are the stories. And the links, I'll put these links on top of yesterday's links. Like I said, the following video is mainly about TikTok star Jesse Sullivan, a trans person, and his comments on Paul Stanley's comments. But the two stories this morning, one in Texas, they were having, in the Texas State House, they were talking about trans people, and there were trans protestors in the hallways. And the police tackled, I'll have the video down below, the state police just tackled and just roughed up, slammed the protesters. And then even more than that one, that's one story. And then the second story, you got to watch the video really to see what's happening here. It's unbelievable. This woman just kind of freezes up and kind of panics. And the cops just jump on her. I mean, like 5-6 cops. And I'm surprised they didn't pull the old standing my ground rule and just, finish her off right there. I mean, I hate to say that, but it wouldn't surprise me. Okay, the second story. This confirms my whole theory. The whole thing, the whole video that I made yesterday. I had to make this video today to talk about this. Florida Republican, state Republican Representative Jeff Holcomb. Okay, he's talking in the Florida State House, the Florida House of Representatives, and he lets the quiet part slip. He's talking about Iraq. He's trying to make a point about other people, our enemies, ISIS, Al Qaeda, and he actually says this, and there's looks of shock, like mouths drop open, because he lets something slip. He's so focused on trying to say, well, those people are worse, that he actually says the quiet part out loud. He's talking about I think a building in Al Qaeda, and he says our enemies were throwing the LGBTQ people off this building, and we bombed it. Then he goes on to say that ISIS, Al Qaeda, et cetera, they hate gay people more than we do. Again, these are not my words. These are the words of Republican Representative Jeff Holcomb. More hate gay people more than we do. Florida Republican state rep. I mean, not in this context, but I've done this before. When you're trying not to say something and you're so focused on distracting somebody somewhere else, you let the quiet part slip. And I'm not talking about this subject right here, but I'm sure all of you know this. You don't let something slip. When you say something like that, it's in your heart. You never hear this guy say, "Oh, they hate money like we do," or You know what I mean? He's letting his true feelings out, and that just confirms. In the second part of this video, I'm talking about how politicians are playing. They're playing a good part of America right now into a. They're playing them into a panic. And Paul Stanley fell for this, where they're making it sound like all the liberals, all the Democrats in the country are trying to make it a big game, a big fad of turning trans, or this whole thing, this whole thing, and it's not. And Jesse Sullivan makes the point perfectly in this short video. So I'll have all the links down below, and you'll see what I'm saying. Like I said, all the links will be down below. Here's the second part of the video that I made yesterday. Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Wednesday. It's Daryl here. It is not too bright and freaking early. I have a hard time doing that. I usually make my videos at early in the morning. It's 10 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, I just walked in the door. I've told you guys before, I do some of my best thinking when I'm out exercising or riding my bike, and I just got back from a 10-mile bike ride, and something's been on my mind. I've been preoccupied with this, and the whole situation since this morning, since I came across, I think it's on Instagram. I'll have the link right down below for you guys. And it's about the whole Paul Stanley. By the way, the Paul Stanley video I did, I think it got 100 views, which is sad. And out of those 100, I got like 6 likes. I didn't even bother reading the comments. So the vast majority of people that watched my video did not agree with me. I need to talk about that some more. About Paul Stanley. And now a video has just come out. It's about a TikTok, popular TikToker, Jesse Sullivan, and he is a trans. I hope I'm using the right pronouns here. He is a trans person, and he is. It looks like he's at an airport. I'll have the video for you down below, and it confirms exactly what I was trying to say in my previous video. He's asked about Paul Stanley's comments about this being like a fad, and parents and kids are just trying to do this because, switch from boy to girl or girl to boy because it's, this ongoing thing. And the whole conservative media, politicians, everybody is pushing this, and it's fear mongering. It's not reality. It really isn't reality. So Jesse Sullivan, I believe his name is, he's asked about this, and he basically, I'm a straight guy, but I think I got it right on this. He says, look, I knew this since he could remember, since he was a little child. It's kind of like being gay. They knew they had the sensation they were in the wrong body. It was scary. And he says, if I could have done anything to not go through this, to be normal, I would have. And he mentioned on how a lot of people resort to drastic measures because they don't know how to deal with this. It's something that it's a real thing. It's not just a fad. The whole conservative media, I believe, is fear-mongering their base, scaring their base into believing that this is the thing with liberals. And their base is basically older Caucasian guys like me. And I'll get into that more in a second. But I don't want to call them stupid, but they're not curious. They don't seek out knowledge. They just go into these echo chambers. And they just keep hearing like this. That's what I believe happened to Paul Stanley. But going back to Jesse Sullivan, he says, he'd do anything not to have to deal with this. It was scary, just everything I imagined, and that's because although that I'm a straight guy, I like to read. I seek out knowledge. Intelligence is being curious. Now, I don't want to call a whole group of people ignorant, but I found that a large amount of conservative people are they don't take any new knowledge. A lot of people that I talk to, these are the people that brag about, I never read a book in my life. I don't have time to read. I don't have time to do this or that. I'm working too hard, too many taxes and all that stuff. And they just get one source of news from right-wing Twitter, right-wing Fox News, and it just they don't get a real version of what reality is. And I think conservative politicians are playing on this. It's fear-mongering. The liberals are going to turn this country into, they're turning the country into a bunch of, pansies, and they're all switching sexes, and oh my God. This base being older and not going to seek out knowledge, just in the same routine of going home from work and watching Fox News and getting on Twitter and watching whatever conservative person on Twitter. They're not getting a real version of what's really happening. Like I said, I actually looked up the numbers, and yes, more people have been identified as trans since in the last 5 years. But if you go look back at gay people, say in the 1700s, you'd say, oh, there was no gay people. Yes, there was the same amount of gay people back in the 1700s. But society started to understand and accept homosexuality more. It's not that more people became gay, it's just because it was accepted and it was understood better. Still, and that still needs a way to go. But I feel like that is the same thing that is with the trans situation. There's always been the same amount of people that are born that feel that for whatever reason, and I don't have an answer to that, but I truly believe that it is a medical, mental, emotional situation where ever since their earliest recollections, they don't feel like they were born into the right body, and I believe it. I look at it this way. What if I remember being in kindergarten, and I remember Mary Beth Flaherty. In kindergarten, I had a crush on this girl. And imagine if it was the situations were reversed, and it was unheard of, for guys to like girls. What if I had to hide it? What if I always, looking at her, I wanted to grow up and marry her, and I make Google eyes at her and all that. But what if all of a sudden, I had to be afraid of doing that because people would find me out? That's called empathy and trying to put yourself in somebody else's position. Going on to Paul Stanley now. Like I said, if you look these numbers up, look up the number. I urge you guys to look up these numbers. Now, there's people like Marjorie Taylor Greene that are even better at this whole fear-mongering, these scare tactics that are they're just trying to get a voting block by misinformation is what they're doing. Again, if you look this up, like the thing they complain about most with hormone blockers and actual surgical procedures on people under 18, look it up for yourself. And I don't mean just on right-wing places or left-wing, but do an honest research. Honestly, look into it. And it's an extremely rare and small number. Like I said in my last video, 47,000 kids in 2021, I think, were under 18. Were identified as trans, up from 17,000. And that's I think it was about half or a little more than half in 5 years. But that's the way I look at it, as the same thing as homosexuality back. It's more accepted now. More young people are willing to talk about it. I think it first becomes acceptable in music and other forms of entertainment where people become more relaxed and start understanding it. Like, it's not just some kind of whim or freak show or whatever, and it's an actual thing, like being gay. Now, Paul Stanley. I don't know Paul Stanley. I wasn't trying to bust on him. Honestly, when I read what he said, and I'll put a link to what he said again, he almost sounds like he understands, but he goes along with that. He understands that there's trans people, adults, but then he goes on to say, and then he's buying into this, like he's not getting the true information. He's falling for this whole fear-mongering thing. That he actually, you can tell that he's been listening to right-wing scare tactics, scare media, fear-mongering, where they're saying that it's this new thing with the liberals, like in every liberal household, mom and dad are having discussions. Oh, you want to be a boy or a girl? No, that's not what's happening. And if you actually look at the numbers and do honest research, and honestly look into it, you'll see that that's not true. That's not happening. You are being purposely misled and being played for your fear. People are playing on your fear response, trying to get a vote from you. That's all this is. Like I said, 47,000 kids out of over 70 million people that are under 18. A tiny fraction. It's not some kind of new thing. If you really do some research, if you're curious about it, if you want to really understand it and look into it, you'll see that nothing's changed. Nothing. This has been, just like homosexuality. Trans people have been around forever, since there's been people. But it's now that they finally feel the urge that they could talk about it or do something about it. And another thing I want to mention is I became familiar with this whole subject going into recovery groups, NA and AA, and I found an overwhelming amount of people in these groups that had turned to drugs, that were from the LGBTQ community because of being shamed and because of feeling like an outcast and all this stuff, and they turn, this, I saw it over and over again in these groups. It's not a fad. It's not something you have to be scared of. The whole country isn't or the whole liberal half of the country isn't trying to play with the sexes like Paul Stanley was led to believe. I think if you really just take a little time and look into it, you'll see. If you look at the video down below of Jesse Sullivan, the way he talks about this. All right, that's what I wanted to say. I hope I made some sense. Have a good Wednesday.